I heard that you have a vault of hundreds of unreleased songs.
One day, someone will release them. I don't know that I'll get to release them.
He wasn't just a performer. Prince was a visionary, a rebel, and a master of mystery. While the world saw the purple suits and electric performances, few knew the depth of what he was hiding behind the locked doors of Paisley Park. After his sudden death in 2016, investigators uncovered a secret vault, sealed tight, untouched for years. Inside wasn't just music, but a collection so massive, personal, and shocking that even his inner circle was stunned. What was Prince protecting so fiercely? What they found will leave you completely speechless. The final days of a legend. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Those were the words Prince once spoke on stage, but now they echoed through crowds gathered at Paisley Park. Not for a concert, but to grieve the very man who uttered them. Fans from around the world stood in silence outside the iconic complex in Minneapolis, where he had lived, worked, and as it turned out, taken his final breath. A musical legend, yes, but to this community, he was more than that. He was one of them. Just days earlier, no one would have guessed what was coming. On social media, Prince had seemed upbeat, posting a flyer for a spontaneous dance party at his estate, thanking fans for their love, the sunshine, and their extra time. That very night, local journalist Sharon Jackson joined the crowd at Paisley Park, not as a reporter, but as a lifelong admirer. She remembered him looking vibrant, even playful. "He didn't seem sick," she said. "He was joking around, telling us not to waste our prayers just yet." It was hard to believe this was a man just hours away from death. But behind the carefully composed image was something no one saw coming. On April 7th, just weeks earlier, Prince had canceled 2 scheduled performances in Atlanta, citing flu-like symptoms. Fans were disappointed but understanding. Then, without warning, he bounced back. 1 week later, on April 14th, he returned to the same city and gave a concert that was nothing short of electric. 4 encores, unstoppable energy, the kind of show only Prince could pull off. Yet, the truth was far more complicated. Just hours after that final performance, while flying back to Minneapolis on his private jet, something went terribly wrong. He lost consciousness mid-flight. The pilot declared a medical emergency and made an unscheduled landing in Moline, Illinois at 1:30 a.m. Prince was rushed to a local hospital. Though he was revived and treated, he left after only 3 hours. The explanation? A bad case of the flu. But those close to the story had their doubts. Flu doesn't knock you unconscious at 30,000 feet. And then came the final hours. A grainy photo surfaced, snapped outside a Walgreens near his home just 1 day before his death. It showed Prince walking alone, clutching a small bag, possibly filled with medication. It may have been the last image ever taken of him alive. Then, on the morning of April 21st, 2016, at exactly 9:43 a.m. Central Time, deputies arrived at Paisley Park and found him unresponsive in the elevator leading to his living quarters. The man who had once said he feared being normal was now the subject of the world's attention for reasons he would have never wanted. Investigators remained tight-lipped. The sheriff handling the case repeatedly stressed there would be no rushed answers. Prince, he said, wasn't just a celebrity. He was a neighbor, a good man, and someone the entire community held dear. The medical examiner released his body to the family, but not yet the answers. The autopsy report would take time, and questions were mounting fast. What really happened to Prince in those final days? What was he battling behind the scenes? An early manager once revealed that Prince's greatest fear wasn't death, it was mediocrity. From writing his first song, Funk Machine, at just 7 years old to transforming into a global icon, Prince was never meant to be ordinary. But even geniuses have their secrets. And beneath the heartbreak that swept across Paisley Park, one haunting question lingered. How could someone so vibrant, so electric, disappear in an instant? Now, before we reveal what was found in his vault, let's first look at the circumstances surrounding his death. The shocking reality behind Prince's final moments. Behind closed doors, Prince had been battling demons that few around him could fully grasp. Years of punishing live shows, spinning, leaping, and dancing in heels had ravaged his joints. By his late 40s, even walking without assistance had become a struggle. A cane appeared, but surgery, which could have restored some mobility, wasn't an option for him. As a devout Jehovah's Witness, he refused treatments that required blood transfusions. So instead, he turned to something else: prescription painkillers, quietly, repeatedly, and in the end, fatally. By April 2016, things had taken a dangerous turn. Prince wasn't just managing discomfort, he was in crisis. Following a near-death experience on board a flight from Atlanta just 6 days before he passed, those closest to him grew increasingly alarmed. He'd lost consciousness mid-air. The jet had to make an emergency landing in Moline, Illinois. Paramedics revived him on the tarmac using Narcan, a medication used to reverse opioid overdoses. The world was told it was the flu, but the truth was far more complex. Prince flew home the next morning. Though he had survived the scare, he knew the danger wasn't over. For the first time, he agreed to seek professional help. On April 20th, his team contacted a respected California addiction specialist, Dr. Howard Kornfeld. The plan was to admit Prince into a rehab clinic called Recovery Without Walls. It was urgent but hopeful. A path toward healing was being mapped out. The next morning, April 21st, the clinic sent Dr. Kornfeld's son, Andrew, to Paisley Park to meet with Prince and help arrange care. Andrew arrived just before 9 a.m., accompanied by Prince's longtime bodyguard, Kirk Johnson, and assistant, Meron Bekure. The three waited in silence, expecting Prince to emerge at any moment. But he didn't. Minutes passed. Then a search. Upstairs, in a private hallway, Kirk opened the elevator door and froze. What he saw was something no friend should ever witness. Prince crumpled on the floor, unresponsive. He shouted for help. Andrew dialed 911. Paramedics arrived quickly, but it was already too late. Prince had no pulse. By 10:07 a.m., he was pronounced dead at the scene. He was only 57. What followed left even those closest to him stunned. It turned out that the painkillers Prince had been taking weren't what they appeared to be. Though they were stamped and sold as Vicodin, these pills were counterfeit, laced with fentanyl, a synthetic opioid so powerful that even a tiny amount can be deadly. In fact, fentanyl is estimated to be 50 times stronger. Prince likely took the dose early that morning, unaware it would be his last. There was no prescription, no pharmacy record, no traceable source. Investigators scoured his inner circle for clues, but nothing concrete emerged. No one was charged, and no foul play was found. The pills had come from somewhere, but no one could say exactly where or how many more he may have taken before. Prince's story, tragic as it was, reflected a broader crisis. By 2016, fentanyl-related deaths were already rising across the United States, and Prince, meticulous, private, careful Prince, had become another name on that growing list. Still, questions remained. What exactly did the autopsy reveal? Was there more to the toxicology report than the public was told? In the next chapter, we'll examine the official autopsy findings to uncover the full truth behind what really killed Prince. The autopsy for Prince's body begins searching for answers. As questions mounted and grief swept across Paisley Park, the body of Prince Rogers Nelson was quietly taken in for examination, the first step in a delicate search for truth. The autopsy didn't begin with a microscope or a toxicology scan. It started with a story, a medical history shaped by decades of extraordinary performances and punishing routines. From the outside, Prince moved with the grace of someone far younger than his 57 years. But internally, his body carried the wear and tear of a man who had once danced in heels, leapt off risers, and performed for hours without pause. The results? Hip, knee, and back injuries that likely never fully healed, even after a hip surgery in 2010. Those wounds may have faded from public view, but the pain never really left. Records reviewed by the medical examiner confirmed what many had suspected. Prince had previously been prescribed strong painkillers intended to ease the lasting effects of those physical injuries. But the real breakthrough came not from what doctors had written down, but from what investigators physically discovered during their search of Paisley Park. Tucked away in bottles labeled as common aspirin or over-the-counter vitamins were something far more dangerous. Lab results later confirmed that these containers held potent opioids, including fentanyl, hidden in plain sight and unprescribed. To the untrained eye, they looked harmless, but inside, they were capable of bringing even the strongest to their knees. Though Prince showed no signs of injury, trauma, or disease severe enough to cause sudden death, his physical state told its own quiet story. The autopsy team noted his recent weight loss, physical exhaustion, and flu-like symptoms, details that aligned closely with the early stages of opioid withdrawal. His chef had already described the shift: poor appetite, less energy, solitude. Combined, these signs pointed toward someone possibly trying to quit a powerful substance on his own, without medical supervision, and in silence. The examiners also reviewed the timeline surrounding his earlier hospital visit in Illinois, where naloxone was used to bring him back from unconsciousness. That incident, along with the harmful substances found on the estate, shaped the next phase of analysis: a full toxicology screen. Yet even as more evidence was uncovered, there was still no sign of foul play. No external wounds, no note. Just a man whose body carried the strain of brilliance and whose final hours left behind more questions than answers. What those toxicology results ultimately revealed would soon bring clarity to a story clouded by speculation. And in the next chapter, we'll break down exactly what the official report found. A fatal dose of silence, what the autopsy finally revealed. As the toxicology screen results came back weeks later, they didn't just confirm suspicions, they exposed a harsh and heartbreaking truth. Prince had died from an accidental overdose of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid so powerful that even 2 milligrams can be fatal. But what shocked investigators even more was how he had ingested it. The harmful substances hadn't come from a prescription or a pharmacy. It was laced inside counterfeit pills, fake medications disguised as familiar over-the-counter tablets, hidden in mislabeled bottles of vitamins and aspirin inside his Paisley Park estate. They looked innocent. They weren't. They were lethal. Blood analysis showed that the amount of fentanyl in his system was not only high, it was catastrophic. The dose had been strong enough to suppress his breathing and shut down his respiratory system completely. It wasn't just dangerous, it was untraceable until it was too late. But how did it come to this? Experts reviewing his final days pointed to a common but deadly pattern: withdrawal followed by relapse. After surviving the overdose on the plane, thanks to the emergency naloxone shot, Prince likely stopped taking anything for several days. His chef noticed he'd barely been eating or drinking. He looked weak, distant, and tired. Classic symptoms of opioid withdrawal. And yet, behind the quiet pain, he was trying, reaching out for help, organizing treatment. A meeting with a specialist had already been scheduled. Still, the struggle was far from over. At some point, maybe in desperation, maybe from mounting discomfort, he reached for what he assumed was a familiar painkiller, something to ease the aches, to get him through. But this time, the pill didn't just numb the pain, it ended his life. That single dose, filled with an unpredictable concentration of fentanyl, proved far stronger than his body could tolerate. And according to toxicologists, the variation in these counterfeit pills is what makes them so deadly. No two are exactly alike, and just one mistake is enough. The autopsy ruled out self-harm. There was no evidence of a note, no confirmed diagnosis of early-onset dementia, despite wild speculation. What they found instead was a man actively trying to get better. He'd reached out to professionals. He was making arrangements for care. There were no signs of intent to end his life, only a deeply private battle with physical pain, hidden addiction, and a moment of tragic miscalculation. The authorities also faced a broader question, one that extended beyond Paisley Park. Across the country, deaths linked to counterfeit fentanyl-laced pills were on the rise. Prince's case, now among the most high-profile, underscored the dark truth behind these harmful substances. They don't just destroy lives. They leave no trail, no fingerprints. No known supplier was ever identified. Without proof of where the pills had come from, prosecutors had no path forward. And so, despite the scope of the loss, no charges were ever filed. As investigators combed through his history, another layer emerged. Prince had a long-standing history of chronic pain. Injuries from decades of intense performances had taken their toll on his hips, his joints, his stamina. Though he once underwent surgery to ease the pain, it likely didn't offer lasting relief. And those close to him now admitted what they hadn't seen before. Prince was a master of control. Proud, guarded, fiercely private. Perhaps too proud to admit how much he was hurting. Too determined to let anyone see the cracks beneath the surface. In the end, the report offered no scandal, only sorrow. Prince didn't know the pills were fake. He had no idea just how potent they were. What he took to ease the pain stole everything. His music, his brilliance, his life, all silenced by a substance he likely never intended to take in the first place. His death didn't just highlight the quiet war he'd been fighting, it threw a blinding spotlight on a national epidemic few were ready to confront. But after all the silent suffering, the hidden battles, and the fatal misstep that took him away, one question still lingers. Did it all fade into silence? Or did Prince leave behind something far more powerful than even he imagined? Stay with us. The truth behind his lasting legacy is just beginning to unfold. The relentless rhythm of Prince. While the autopsy exposed what took Prince's life, what it couldn't measure was the unstoppable energy that defined how he lived and created. Prince didn't just make music, he became it. In the studio, on stage, even mid-flight between cities, he was in constant motion, building soundscapes from nothing but a lyric scribbled on hotel stationery. What most artists needed weeks to shape, he forged in a single day. The rhythm never stopped. A song could begin with a simple drum beat in the morning, pick up swirling synths and searing guitar riffs by nightfall, and be fully recorded, mixed, and mastered before sunrise. He didn't believe in waiting for inspiration. He summoned it, often at a pace too fast for others to follow. And that's why working with Prince wasn't for the faint-hearted. Engineers had to move fast or get left behind. One minor delay in a studio session, and you were gone. No excuses, no retakes. Prince preferred women engineers for their speed and ability to work without friction. He needed momentum, not perfection, because perfection, in his view, didn't live in polished retakes. It lived in raw emotion, in the crack of a voice, the imperfect first take, the unfiltered, unrepeatable burst of feeling. That was what mattered. Susan Rogers, one of his trusted engineers, watched him birth hit after hit like clockwork. Kiss, Sign of the Times, When Doves Cry. It wasn't magic. It was a relentless ethic, an unstoppable current. He once recorded an entire album in 7 days using only scraps of lyrics and his own instruments. Not concepts, not outlines, songs. Complete, layered, alive. Even during rehearsals, he never slowed down. Sound checks weren't 15 minutes. They were 4-hour jam sessions. And when the actual concert was over, Prince didn't rest. He'd head straight to the studio. His nights didn't end until it was time to board a plane or step onto another stage. Rest was saved for the tour bus, or for the short hours between soundcheck and showtime. When he wasn't touring, he recorded daily. Music was his oxygen. Recording wasn't a job. It was his heartbeat. His music flowed like a fever dream, often born in a single take, guided by feeling, not technical obsession. He didn't care about audio purity. He cared about truth. If the emotion was there, that was enough. He could capture it in 5 minutes and move on. No endless tweaking, no overthinking. It was a mindset that bled into every note he touched. Finish fast. Don't look back. And yet, for someone who moved at such a rapid pace, Prince was also shockingly deliberate about legacy. He understood that his daily output was more than a catalog. It was history in the making. That's why he built not just a studio at Paisley Park, but a vault. Not a metaphorical one, a real secure room with a code-locked door. And inside it, thousands of fully finished, unreleased songs. Not drafts, not ideas. Entire albums. The volume of music he recorded but never shared was staggering. So vast, it's said that even if every song were released today, it would take a decade to hear them all. He approached every recording like it might last forever. Because to him, it would. He didn't just want to entertain the moment. He wanted to outlive it. The vault wasn't for throwaways. It was his fortress of brilliance, a quiet archive of what he chose to protect, and what the world has yet to hear. Because while Prince lived for the stage, he preserved his deepest work for something else entirely, a future he carefully planned but never got to see. And as we'll soon uncover, what lies behind that sealed vault door might just change everything we thought we knew about his legacy. Prince's vault and the music he never let go. Tucked beneath the polished floors of Paisley Park, behind a thick, combination-locked steel door, sat one of the most mysterious treasures in modern music history. Prince's vault. Not a metaphor, not a nickname, but a real fortified chamber. A place designed to withstand storms, time, and even human temptation. For Prince, this vault wasn't just a storage room, it was a living archive, a guarded monument to his brilliance, still whispering with unheard melodies. Prince didn't believe in creative waste. Every lyric, riff, harmony, or spontaneous groove was recorded, labeled, and filed. His collaborators often joked he didn't write songs, he channeled them. He could step off a concert stage and within hours be layering vocals and drums for an entirely new track. One engineer described the process as a funnel of genius. Music didn't just pass through him, it poured. And instead of being released right away, much of it was quietly sealed behind that steel door. Inside the vault were not sketches or half-finished demos, but complete albums, polished and ready for the world, yet kept in the dark. Some tapes bore live recordings, others rehearsals or alternate versions of beloved hits. And yet, only a fraction, some estimate 5 to 10%, was ever made public during his lifetime. Engineers who worked closely with him claimed there were over 2,000 unreleased tracks when they last took count. Over time, that number only grew. Prince alone had the code to the vault. Not even his assistants, managers, or engineers knew how to open it without him, and no one dared try. It wasn't just locked physically, it was locked emotionally and spiritually. To open the vault without his permission would have felt like breaking a sacred oath. For Prince, this wasn't just about control, it was about vision. He believed art should outlive the artist, and that some creations weren't meant for the present, but for future generations who might truly understand them. The vault became part of his legend, an untouchable treasure chest that both haunted and inspired. Journalists speculated, fans fantasized, even fellow musicians wondered what was inside. Prince teased its contents in interviews, but never promised access. It was as if the vault itself was the message. That legacy isn't just what you release, but what you choose to hold back. Those who knew him best said the vault was Prince's way of thinking far beyond his time. Some guessed he planned to unveil pieces gradually over decades. Others believed he may never have intended for its contents to be released at all. Either way, it wasn't just a place for songs. It was a mirror of his mind, restless, layered, secretive, and always one step ahead. But then came the moment no one expected, his death. And with it, a question that echoed through the music world. What would become of the vault? Because for all the myths that surrounded it, nothing could have prepared the world for what was actually found behind that locked door. Stay with us, because the next chapter uncovers the shocking discoveries waiting inside, the secrets behind the steel door. When Prince passed on April 21, 2016, one question echoed louder than the grief. What exactly had he left behind? That answer lay behind a cold steel door deep inside Paisley Park. A door that hadn't been opened in years. With Prince gone and no known code to access it, the estate authorized a professional safecracker named Dave McComey to step in. Using high-powered tools, he drilled into the thick vault-grade metal. And what he uncovered stunned even the people who had stood beside Prince for decades. Floor to ceiling, the vault was overflowing, an avalanche of reels, cassette tapes, handwritten lyrics, video footage, hard drives, and notebooks. The numbers were staggering. Over 8,000 unreleased recordings, enough to fill more than 50 full-length albums. Among them were finished works such as Camille, Dream Factory, and the Vault Volumes, all completely unknown to the public. There were hours of live performances, studio sessions, rehearsal takes, and more than 50 unreleased music videos. Some projects involved collaborators like Chaka Khan, Sheena Easton, and Sheila E., while others came from Prince alone, his fingers playing every instrument, his voice in every harmony. One of the most surprising discoveries wasn't just the quantity, but the care. Engineers and archivists found precise labeling, with dates, track lists, and studio notes scribbled in Prince's own handwriting. Many recordings were so polished, they could have hit shelves the next day. Others were more experimental, songs abandoned mid-verse or deliberately stripped back, reflecting Prince's constant evolution. Some albums had even been completed, pressed, and then pulled by Prince himself when he no longer felt they matched his vision or values. The Black Album, once slated for release, was pulled back at the last minute for spiritual reasons, still sealed inside the vault. The scope of the material was overwhelming. It wasn't just unreleased music, it was an entire alternate history of Prince's creativity, filled with hidden identities like his alter ego Camille, genre-blurring compositions, and musical ideas no one outside his studio had ever heard. Archivists compared the task of cataloging it all to curating a museum on par with the Louvre. Except this museum was locked inside a single man's mind for decades. Legal disputes over ownership delayed public access for years. In 2022, after long court battles, the estate was split between Prince's heirs and a music publishing firm. Only a few albums, like Piano and a Microphone 1983 and Welcome to America, have emerged so far. The rest still sits in the shadows, waiting. What amazed experts the most wasn't just that the vault existed, but that it was filled with complete, ready-to-release masterpieces. Music that could easily stand beside his most iconic hits. These weren't forgotten scraps. They were intentional, powerful, and timeless. Prince didn't just save everything. He built something. A personal archive, a legacy on standby, a creative universe designed not for applause, but for permanence. Because at the end of the day, Prince didn't build that vault for fame. He built it to protect his true life's work. Prince vs. the Machine, why he built the vault. What truly made Prince's vault more than just a room of recordings was why it was built. Because it wasn't protection from time. It was protection from the industry itself. From the very beginning of his career, Prince had one core belief. If he created it, he should own it. But the music industry didn't work that way. Not then, not now. Signed to Warner Brothers at just 18, he quickly learned the harsh truth of major labels. They owned everything, even the name Prince. So when he began to rise, when Purple Rain made him one of the biggest stars on the planet, he tried to renegotiate. Not to break ties, but to make things fair. Warner Brothers refused. And when they refused, Prince fought back, publicly. He stopped using his name, replacing it with a symbol. He wrote "Slave" across his cheek during interviews and red carpet appearances. He re-recorded his entire catalog so fans could choose to buy from him, not the label. His words were clear. If FedEx doesn't claim ownership of a box it ships, why should a label claim ownership of a song I made? But it wasn't just Warner. Prince saw the entire system as broken, designed to profit from the artist while controlling them. He warned others too, calling for freedom and ownership at award shows and during speeches, knowing few dared to say the truth out loud. He even targeted platforms like YouTube and eBay for using his work without permission. His mission was simple. Artists should never have to beg for rights to their own creations. This wasn't some abstract cause. Prince had real-life examples all around him, from stories of artists being blackballed for speaking out, to whispers of suspicious dealings involving major figures like Diddy and Jay-Z. The pattern was clear. Power protected itself. He even distanced himself from Diddy after allegedly allowing him to throw a party at his house, refusing to attend after suspecting disturbing activity behind closed doors. Later, Prince's estate would also sue Jay-Z's company, accusing them of illegally uploading 15 of his albums to Tidal without authorization, proof to Prince's fans that even those claiming to be artist-friendly could cross lines. So Prince built something different. He built the vault not only as a creative sanctuary, but as a shield, a private archive meant to preserve what the industry couldn't touch. It was his protest, his legacy, and his final act of defiance. But what do you think drove Prince to lock away thousands of songs? Was it artistic control, fear of betrayal, or something darker? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.